Oh, hey.
Anyhow, I'm gonna go ahead and try to do another video on Quartzsite. There I said it. Oh, whatever. I run another channel and I don't want to. Anyways, whatever. So these videos I'm doing is on Quartzsite. So I'm just gonna do this video. I've lived in Quartzsite since the beginning of 2017. I've lived here for how many years is that? 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 20. Like almost 8 years I've lived in Quartzsite. And I keep to myself. I don't get involved in anything. All I do is work. That's it. I work and I keep to myself. And I'll tell you some people that are friends of mine. Stu Campbell was a friend of mine. I worked for Danny Duke and Ashira at Prospectors Panorama for like at least 6 years. I worked for John and May for a year at Prospectors Panorama. I'm involved in helping people recover from drugs and alcohol in Quartzsite. I have been since I got here. I'm actively involved in assisting and supporting people being sober and drug and alcohol free. And you can ask anybody in this town that's involved in helping people maintain abstinence from drugs and alcohol. You can ask them about me. I've been involved in that part of the Quartzsite community for 8 years. And that's all I do. I work, and then on my off time, I'm involved in assisting and supporting people recovering from drugs and alcohol. That's all I do. And so I keep to myself. I mind my own business. I don't, I just want to be left alone outside of that, And so for the first, this town is crazy. And I think anybody watching this would agree with me that this town is just crazy. It is. It's crazy. See, I'm crazy though. So I can, it's all right with me. But it wasn't until October of 2022 that I realized how crazy this town is. And October of 2022 is when the home that I lived in burnt down, along with a 4-bedroom house and a 2,000 plus square foot storage building on the corner of Elsie and Kofa. Some of you may be aware of that property. When I lived there, it was nice. Bonnie and Hank lived there, and their setup was very nice. They did beautiful landscaping and everything. And I lived there with now my ex. In future videos, I might talk about her because she was directly tied to Todd Minshall's death. And Todd Minshall lived 1 block up from me. And his body was found mysteriously dead out in the desert. Mysteriously. Nobody knew what happened. Anyhow, I've been living in this town since the beginning of 2017. And all I do, I keep to myself. I work for Danny Duke and Ashira at Prospectors Panorama. Danny Duke and Ashira own Prospectors Panorama on the corner of Kewen and 95. And there's a lot of vendors there. I know tons of vendors in this town. Like, I've lived here for 8 years. And I am most closely involved with the clean and sober community in Quartzsite, and I have been for 8 years. So if any of you know of any people in the clean and sober community in this town, just ask them about me. So I'm nobody special, right? And I've seen crazy stuff going on in this town up before October of 2022. And it did affect me, but it wasn't until Todd Minshall's death. Todd Minshall's death was June 20th of 2022. And then by June, July, August, September, within 3 or 4 months of Todd Minshall's death was when my entire life was turned completely upside down, involving a fire and I can go into this whole story. And, but even before the Todd Minshall death, it became very obvious to me that it doesn't seem like people in this town really care about anything going on in this town. I could tell you this, like the story of just how I got with my now ex-girlfriend is because she was being stalked by a sexual predator in this town for like months and months, and she reported it to her bosses. She did all this and nobody listened to her. I was like the only person that listened to her. And the only reason I listened to her is because I worked in social services for 10 years and was a mandated reporter. I was a certified mandated reporter. I was a certified rapid HIV test counselor. I worked with addicts and alcoholics, and I worked in the whole service provider field of social services for 10 years, which is that's all corrupt. I know. I doubt many people know how corrupt that industry is, but I digress, as the cool kids say, right? But because of all my training in social services, when she told me that she was being stalked by some creepy sexual predator in this town and had been being stalked for many months, well, because of my experience in social services, I felt it my duty to do something, just something. And then the more I talked to her, the more I found out nobody in this town is doing anything, and this girl is like screaming for help because a sexual predator has been stalking her for months, and nobody in this town is doing it. Like, this is laughable, right? To me, maybe to you, this is just whatever, who cares? And see, that's part of the point of this video is, does anybody in Quartzsite even care what's going on here at all? At all. Because you see it time and time again, over and over and over and over. Like I brought up the 9-year-old child getting run over by a semi during the season of 2022 or 23. Wasn't even printed in the paper. And like I was saying, all that they ever print in the paper is that there's a wonderful camel rides coming up. And when something like this happens, it's never printed in the paper. And this may seem normal to you. You may be so apathetic that you just it doesn't even faze you at all. You could care less, But to me, that's really weird. And these weird occurrences are constant in Quartzsite. And most of them are swept under the rug and hidden and with fingers crossed, hoping nobody stirs up any dust about that latest thing that just happened in Quartzsite. The cop that killed the guy, what was that, in November of 2024, like 4 months ago? Nobody cares about that. When Todd Minshall's body was mysteriously found out in the desert, nobody cares, no mention. None of this is ever in any newspaper. But that paper just keeps pumping out how the camel rides will be here soon. The camel rides are coming, you guys. And I'm thinking, am I on acid, or does like anybody in this town give a shit about any of this? You know, and I'm sorry, dude. So I've lived here 8 years. Maybe you lived here 200, so you have more experience. I've only lived here 8 years. And what I have seen is completely ridiculous. It is a freaking circus. It is a clown show, what is going on in Quartzsite. It is a freaking clown show. And like Mike Roth, you know. I mean, do I even have to say any more? Just the name Mike Roth, you know. Dude, Mike Roth lives a half a block down from Todd Minshall, whose body just mysteriously was found dead in the desert with no explanation, nothing, and nobody cares, you know. There we go. You know, and then Mike Roth's got the town coming down on him, and then I live just a half a block up from Mike Roth. And there's all this insanity going on at my place, fire and brimstone and death threats, and it's all pointing to, you know, Todd's death. It's all related to Todd's death. So I guess the point of this video is there anybody in Quartzsite that cares about anything going on here? You know? How many, you know, when Todd Minshall's death was mentioned in the Quartzsite chatter, I'm not on Quartzsite chatter. I was talking to people about it, and people were telling me that they were going into the comment sections and asking, well, what about this dead body that was found, you know, a month after Todd's? What about this dead body that was found in front of the 76 where it's claimed he blew his brains out? Like there's all these people start bringing up all these other dead bodies that are happening around the same time they found Todd Minshall's dead body. And I'm thinking, what in the frickin' frick is going on in this town? And how is it that nobody cares? Is the Quartzsite government so corrupt that they have that strong of a stranglehold on the citizens of this town that this is like a cult out here. This is like a Mormon cult out here, dude. Quartzsite is like a big, massive cult where nobody says anything. And all they ever talk about is the camel rides and the balloon rides. And nobody ever talks about anything but the camel rides and the balloon rides. You know? Meanwhile, a child gets excuse my language, gets splattered on Highway 99 right across the street from Tyson Wells right in the middle of the season. And all anybody has to say is that the camel rides are over there on Main Street, you know. People's dead bodies showing up. No, all anybody has to say is the balloon rides, camel rides, you know, rainbows, butterflies, unicorns. I've heard all of this about how wonderful Quartzsite is. But see, I've lived here for 8 years. I know I got a pretty good pulse on what's going on in Quartzsite. And it's not rainbows and butterflies and unicorns. And if you're watching this video, you know that it's not rainbows and butterflies and unicorns here in Quartzsite, is it? Like, what happened with that cop that killed that guy at Pilot gas station? What happened to Todd Minshall and all these other dead bodies that who knows how many dead bodies are piling up here that have no explanation, no investigation, nobody's asking questions, nobody's doing or saying or caring about any of it. Does the corrupt government and all the tweakers have such a stranglehold on this town that this whole town is just too afraid to talk about anything going on here? I mean, what kind of ghosts, what kind of skeletons would you imagine that Quartzsite has in its closet? How many dead bodies are piled up out here over the last 20 years that just got swept under the rug? Because, you know, breaking news is the camel ride, right? How many? You know, how much blood do these people running this town have on their hands? Is what I want to know. Call me a conspiracy theorist. You know? So I'm going to keep harping on the Todd Minshall thing. Win or lose, I'm going to keep harping on the Todd Minshall thing. I want to know what happened to Todd Minshall. They found his dead body. You know, Dennis Fosper contacted the people that found his dead body, 3 days ago, and the people that were the first people to come upon Todd Minshall's body said that there was no gun anywhere. There was at least one bullet hole in his head, and it was on the wrong side. Like, if he's right-handed, he was right-handed, so if he shot himself, he would have shot himself with his right hand. Well, the bullet hole was on the left-hand side, according to, you know, that's what the people that found his body said. I don't know what other details there are in there, but there was no gun. Does anybody care that, like, there are people in town saying he was murdered? Or is it only going to matter when it happens to you, when your home gets burnt down? Then it's going to matter. Well, by the time they come and burn your home down, there ain't going to be anybody here that really cares whether your home burnt down or not. Because all we're supposed to care about in Quartzsite is the camel rides. Do you think anybody's going to care if arsonist burns your house down in Quartzsite? You think it's going to be on the front in the newspaper? You think that the town is going to do an investigation? I guess it just depends on how much money you have as to whether or not the town will do an investigation on it or not, right? Or if you get murdered. It depends on how, you know, how much money you had before you died as to whether or not they're going to do an investigation into it. So if my body shows up mysteriously dead out on the outskirts of town, say next week, nobody in this town's going to care and be like, hey, isn't that guy that kept talking about Todd Minshall being murdered and that he was receiving death threats and claiming that arsonists burned his home down? Isn't that guy that was claiming he was getting death threats and now he's dead out in the desert? Is anybody going to care if my body shows up dead out in the desert a week from now? Will that change Quartzsite? Will Quartzsite then be like, you know what? Maybe, you know, then will Quartzsite change its tune and say, maybe we should have some news media. You know, it might actually help prevent potential murders if we actually had news media to keep the town informed on what's going on. How many people have to die? Who has to die before it's newsworthy? Like, if a city council person's body was found mysteriously dead out in the desert, then would it be in the paper? Yeah, then it would be in Rainbeard or Bearscat's paper. So if a city council member's body was mysteriously found in the desert, dead, then the city council would make sure that there's a newspaper article about how this person's body was just found mysteriously dead out in the desert, and we don't really know. There's a bullet hole in their head, but there was no gun, and so we don't really know what's going on. It could be a suicide, you know. We're looking into it. Then it would make the news if it was a city council member. But if it's just someone like Todd Minshall, then who fucking cares? Is that the way this town runs? That's the way this is the town that you, like, see, the more I think about it, the more I can sympathize with people who just leave Quartzsite. They live here, They live here until the town rears its ugly head and their house gets burnt down. Then they start looking around and realizing nobody in this town even cares about what goes on here. And they say, fuck this, I'm out of here. And they pack their shit up and they leave. Nobody's sticking around to live here because nobody here cares about what's going on. So if you're hanging around here and something happens to you, like what happened to Mike or what happened to me, and or what happened to who knows how many countless other people who've been ignored. When it happens to you, you really think anybody's going to care? Unless you're on the city. If you're on the city council, then they'll care. Or the town council, sorry. Town council, not city, town council. So if you're on the town council, then people will care about what's going on. If you're getting a death threat or having your home burnt down, or maybe your body is mysteriously found dead out in the desert. If you're a town council member, then it matters. But if you're someone just like Todd Minshaw, who fucking cares? Get the broom out. Let's sweep this one under the rug. Okay, print out another camel ride article. Make it front page. See, that's how this town works. That is literally how this town works. And if you don't know that that's how this town works, then you got your head buried in the sand. You're just another one of these people in this town that has your heads buried so deep in the desert sand out here that you're totally clueless as to what's going on. So, and I don't know why that is. Is it because this town, there's so many elderlies here that it's just that elderly here is why nobody cares? And then that would be why the town council and the town management can so easily exploit the residents of this town, because they're all just elderly people and stuff, easily exploitable people that nobody cares about, right? I mean, I'm listening to myself talk, and I'm realizing, that's what's going on here. All the town's residents are just disposable people, useless eaters. All these town residents, they're all just disposable people, useless eaters, easily exploitable. And so the town council and all these people that run this town, that's how they view all the town people, all the people that live here. The majority of them are just, easily exploitable people that we can exploit for our own personal gain. And because, they're not very important people, we just wait and, sweep everything under the rug, who cares, right? So anyways, yeah, so I've lived here 8 years. I know I haven't lived here 200 years like all you veterans, Quartzsite veterans. I've only been here 8 years, okay? But it doesn't take more than about 8 years, you pretty much figured out Quartzsite. You've either figured out Quartzsite within 8 years or less, or 7, 8 years, you either figured Quartzsite out, or you've buried your head deep in the sands of Quartzsite and are totally oblivious to anything going on here. And that's what you have. So are you oblivious, or do you know, or do you got a pretty good pulse on what Quartzsite is? Because I do. But you know what? Whatever. Don't listen to me. You know who's important are those town council people. Those are the people you want to listen to, right? So, see ya.